just with the mass incarceration thing, I mean, that's probably like a 5-hour lecture. There's just a lot of facets there. But whatever you guys have questions about, I'm just going to try and stick a little bit more to solitary confinement. Ask whatever questions that you want, even if you think it's like abrasive or whatever. Solitary confinement is just like, rape culture and domestic violence. It's shit that people don't want to talk about. It's an ugly subject. You know what I mean? And, if you don't talk about these things, it's just going to keep it there. So, my name is Migs. I've been incarcerated multiple times. I've done a lot of time in solitary confinement, usually for organizing. I usually go to prison for protesting. And while I'm there, I organize with other people of my same class there to break down racial barriers, but also strategically to push back against the administration. So I do a lot of organizing while I'm incarcerated, and as a result, I spend a lot of time in solitary confinement. They just don't want you in general population if you're, even teaching people how to read. So, let's see. Let's just start out. There's like MSU, there's the SHU, there's all these different terms. It's basically the same thing. Different states call these things. The only difference between segregation and solitary confinement is you have a cellmate. There's varying degrees of misery. So, I mean, being by yourself is horrible, but being in something like the size of a bathroom for 24 hours and then for weeks and months with someone it doesn't go very well. Even if it was your mom, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend in the world, it's just unnatural to be in that close quarters without any break. So it's very stressful in that regard. So solitary and SAG are essentially the same thing. You don't have any sort of movement. So there's all sorts of different terms. There's no difference between any of it. Some of the facilities are a little bit different. They're basically the same thing. So, you hear stuff about, getting an hour out and, these things like a lot of the shows, it's all bullshit. Like, if you are in you have not been convicted yet and you're in a county jail, you're supposed to have 1 hour out, and usually they'll give it to you depending. But once you're in prison, you don't have the same rights as if you're out here. So if you have a ticket there, it's not the same as going to court out here. You can have a lawyer, you can have some sort of representation. There, you can't have representation, and the people who gave you the ticket are also sitting on the panel that's going to find you guilty or not guilty. I've never seen someone get found not guilty for a ticket. So it's like a totally different type of court. It's a total kangaroo court. So, let's see. The biggest problem with the use of solitary confinement is not just like the negative effects it has on people short term and then long term. It's not used as a tool because it's like this is the boogeyman. These people are too dangerous to be around others. The queer and trans population in prison, the general population is very, very homophobic, and even people who aren't usually don't stand up for anybody else. You know what I mean? They just kind of co-sign that type of bullshit because it's something that's hard to do while they're there. If like queer and trans people, will get jumped on by somebody, if not jumped on by the correctional officers, but they're looked at as the problem. Like, that's how the COs look at it. It's like, you choose to act like this, you choose to talk like that, therefore you're the problem. So most of them are, if not checking into protective custody, a lot of them are just put in solitary confinement. So they're like, you keep getting in fights, you're a problem, you're choosing to act differently, you're disrupting whatever order that we're supposed to have. So there's a lot of people who are in solitary confinement just because of their sexual origin, their sexual identity. So that's a pretty big group. Jailhouse lawyers, like people who start to learn case law, who are going through the mediums and the channels that they're told to do to get some sort of justice. And these COs, they don't want to be held accountable for what they do. And they file grievances, they file lawsuits. and they help other people do it, which is like, which I think is like a very righteous thing to do. But you know, they don't look at it that way. They look at this person's a problem. So they're there, activists, and then it's the vast majority of people there are mentally ill, and it's hard to say if they were mentally ill before, before being placed there, or they became mentally ill after being there for a period of time. So, it's not like you would think where, you're sitting in this box and it's just super quiet and you're by yourself and you're just like, I'm not going to say you're not like counting the bricks on the wall and doing all sorts of stuff, because you have a lot of time, but it's a little different. If any of you have ever worked in a factory before, or like worked around machinery, like it's close to like that level of sound all the time. The acoustics are bad in like all the institutions. I don't know if there's anything to be done about that, but people will kick and bang on the doors 24 hours a day. And any conversation that's had between anyone is just the old-fashioned way of screaming as loud as you can from one place to another and having a conversation. So you have multiple people doing that, and you really can't sleep ever. Maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks you'll have dead silence, and it'll be for less than 10 seconds. Like you can just count down, and someone's gonna jump up and just start kicking on their door, either because they can't stand the silence anymore, or they just don't want anyone else to get any sort of sleep. So it's not like really quiet, like a solitude type of thing. It's very loud, it's very abrasive. Lights are usually on all the time, or they'll turn them off for about 5 or 10 minutes and then come by and do another count. So between, there always being the lights on and the noise, it's hard to sleep. So that's very difficult to deal with for an extended period of time. Temperature is usually very, very hot or freezing cold. Sometimes the correctional officers at the place that I was would intentionally open all the windows in the winter, so that they're freezing you, or they would like pepper spray the vents, which means like you're all like getting gassed, or they'll just mace somebody that is, not too far away, but anyways, it's all the air is just circulated. So, does anybody have like any questions, like any terminology that I'm using, or anything that you want to know specifically when we're doing this? Just ask. So.
Well, in solitary confinement, I know, is there any like bunks to sleep in, or is it even less than that?
You'll have a bunk to sleep on. A lot of them are like just double bunked. Not a lot of space.
Cushion at all?
Yeah, they're so shredded and just ripped up that it's kind of a joke. You kind of want to take whatever sheet you have to just try and just keep it together. There's not a lot of space in these cells. I was in Pontiac, and I could touch both walls with like room to spare. So about like this. So I could sit with my back up against the wall and kick my feet up on the wall and like read a book. And it would be about 2.5 steps to the front of the cell. Some of the cells will have bars. Bars are awesome. Like it makes a very big difference. A lot of them are just straight steel, and you have some holes drilled in them, or nothing at all, and just like a chuck hole. So you can't see anything, can't tell what time of day it is. You'll find various ways to try and figure that out to keep track. Usually by the SEALs walking by and doing a count. SEALs don't give a fuck about you in any way, shape, or form. And even if they do, they're conditioning themselves to not, because they don't want to appear weak and feel like then they're going to get, exploited or preyed on. So even the ones that maybe do feel bad in a sense, they'll never show it. And they're not willing to lose their job or do anything for anyone. It's very, very uncommon, especially in like solitary confinement. So they do a lot of these counts. They do these counts just because they don't want you to kill yourself while they're there. That's it. They don't care if you kill yourself. They just don't want to do that paperwork. So these counts, the suicide rate is pretty high in solitary confinement. It's much lower than it would be because they're doing these counts. It's a little bit difficult, but people find ways, and like I've seen and been around human beings doing
on themselves unless they were like high on PCP or something else. Like these are people who are like sober. I mean, there's two people. There's one in Pontiac and then Menard who cut their own genitals off. Like these are males. Like this is something that we're usually pretty valuable and important to do. So to do that because you can't, there's some sort of self-torture. Like no one came in there like that, and they weren't like that in general population. These are like effects of solitary. So yeah, the suicide rate. Honestly, you want to kill yourself, just do it. I mean, I've had friends that have gone through all sorts of stuff. I'm there for everybody, whatever they need. When I'm in solitary in prison, I ain't gonna help you do it. But if that's what you want to do, I'm not gonna stop you from your only way out. It's hard to tell someone who's like suffering that bad to tell them it's gonna be okay, because they're gonna die in there. They're gonna suffer every day for the rest of their life.